Hi, it's Nick Stekovic, Project Manager Revolution, and in this video, I'm going to go over how Agile has made me a top income earner. Stay tuned. Hey, welcome back. We're talking today about how Agile has made me a top income earner. But before we actually get into that, make sure you subscribe to my YouTube channel and get all the latest tips, tricks, techniques, and tools, processes for project management in order for you to advance into the project management career and actually become a top earner and performer. So before we actually get into the details of today's video, I just want to point out that I want to make sure that each person that checks out every single of my videos is an understanding of who I am, what I stand for, and so forth. So my name is Nick Stekovic, as I introduced myself earlier in the video. I've been in project management for over 16 years, pretty much every industry. I worked on projects anywhere from 2 million to 100 million, just pretty much managing any type of resource, any vendor. Most of the companies these days that I managed are big names like CGI, Microsoft, Google, and many different banks and so forth. So I've been in this space for a long time, and over the years, I've acquired skills in project management that I've, for the last couple of years, have passed on to other project managers, and I'm currently coaching and mentoring many professionals as well as many different companies, and I'm also consulting in project management. So I'm doing here and there projects for some very large Fortune 500 companies, and then in the last 4 or 5 years, I've been strictly focusing on digital transformations. So now that we got that out of the way, the other thing that is also important is that, the things that you're going to be learning in this video and other videos on my YouTube channel are very different than from the other promoters or other YouTubers on this particular topic. And you'll quickly see that difference because we focus on videos that are actually providing solutions. And not only solutions, but actual hands-on skills and knowledge that you can use on your current projects or your future projects in your project management practice, which is very different from the approach from many competitors and people out there online and even offline, where they kind of focus on teaching you how to pass PMP exams, ACP exams, and all these certificates that at the end of the day, they don't really serve a purpose. I mean, it's great to have them, maybe stick them on your wall or have them somewhere where, you feel good about them. But at the end of the day, the jobs and the projects you'll be managing are strictly focused on knowledge versus theory, right? So that is something that you should watch out for, and it's something that nobody really talks about in this space online, but it should be talked about because at the end of the day, it's how much you know versus what you have on paper. I mean, the reality is that you do have to have some sort of paper, but not necessarily the prerequisite to land contracts and land opportunities in project management. Okay, so now that we got that out of the way, we want to focus on talking about today's topics, right? So there's 2 topics that I want to talk about today. I know the video is about project management and how Agile has actually allowed me to be a top performing earner. But before we actually get into that, I want to talk about Agile versus Waterfall. So kind of to give you guys an introduction into this video, and especially for those that are not in project management, but they're looking to get into project management. For those that are actually in project management, I guess you guys can skip a little bit this beginning of the video, and you can skip later on where I actually go into the facts of my story and how Agile has actually helped me get to where I am today. So today we'll be doing a picture-in-picture mode. So you'll see on one side of the screen this particular video where I'm being shot directly on camera, and on the other screen you'll see my whiteboard, and I'm using this amazing pad with the electronic pencil that I've got from Amazon. It was like only like $60, and it's just amazing. So I'm trying to maximize with these presentations so that it makes it easier for you guys to understand as we go through it. So let's get to it. Okay, so we're talking about Agile versus Waterfall. So just a brief kind of introduction between the two, and then we'll get into my story and so forth. So, and also don't mind if I look up into this screen. I'm currently managing this engagement, this project, a very large project that's based on this upcoming new technology. And so, don't mind me if I keep on looking at the updates, and if I scan through it often. I just have to keep up with things at the time that I'm also recording this video. Okay, so the first thing we're going to start with is, Agile versus Waterfall, right? So principles, right? So Agile is very easy to deliver, and it's also great for delivering early, right? To deliver things early, right? With Waterfall, it is a bit different story, because it focuses on actually working on things from business case to eventually formalizing a charter, boom, 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 boom. Then you eventually get to your a scope statement, and then your project plan, and WBS, all that stuff, and then you get to development, testing, and then at the end you've got this product, right? And so for Agile, it would take you, in Agile we do have like 2-week sprints, 3-week sprints, 4-week sprints. So typically you would be able to see early results. So stakeholders and business owners, they'll be able to get early results based on the 2 cycles of 2 weeks that the team has done some development, and they've created a shippable product. So the idea is that in Agile, especially if you're practicing Scrum, in 2-week sprint, you've got this shippable product at the end of the 2 weeks that you can actually go and present to your stakeholders or your business, and then they can demo it, they can play with it, and they can see something physically versus not seeing anything in Waterfall, where you kind of start and then you go all the way until the end, and that could actually be months, right? The other thing that we want to talk about is, where is Agile implemented? I mean, best use for Agile to be implemented, and best way for Waterfall to be implemented. So I would say probably software, and maybe IT, and maybe also marketing, right? Just because with software, it's very dynamic. Same thing with IT. Many different activities that you can do in IT that can be dynamic, and so it's just easier for organization and execution, as well as marketing, because there's many things that are on the fly. Things can change, right? With Waterfall, I mean, ideally you can do a construction project, or maybe like manufacturing, because there's certain strict steps that you need to take in order to get to the end, right? Like if you're building a building, right? You start from step 1, then you go into step 2, you get into step 3, and so on, right? And that leads you to your completion, right? The other thing that we want to talk about is change, right? So change on a project in Agile is easy. Why is it easy? Because you're working in a 2-week, maybe 4-week cycle, versus in Waterfall, the change is hard, because for a change to happen in Waterfall, you have to go through something called a change control process, right? Which then spits out a CR. And what's CR? CR is a change request, which then kind of has its own document that needs to be approved. This then is looked at from a time, resource, and money thing, and based on that, we'll determine how long it's going to take, how much money it's going to cost, how many resources. Versus over here, you are basically operating in a 2-week to a 4-week sprint, and yes, you do need to assess how much it's going to cost, right, in time, but really here you're working with a dedicated team, a dedicated Agile team or Scrum team, that can turn it around in maybe this current sprint that they're operating in, or maybe like future sprint, right? And that would only take you maybe 2 weeks from now, or maybe even like 4 weeks from now. Whereas opposed to this can take you much longer, because the change needs to be approved, but then you're going by your timeline, right? And are you going to be actually stopping the project? If you stop the project, maybe you're going to be extending the project, right? But you don't want that, because the client maybe has a fixed date that they need to finish by, right? So that could be an issue, right? Another thing is the way how things are being delivered in Agile is delivered in sprints. And the sprints can be 2 weeks, 4 weeks. Preferably, most organizations, they stick with 2 weeks, whereas opposed to Waterfall, it's based on tasks. And then these tasks also have dependencies, right? And they're in successor format. So when you take a look at how you build your plan in Waterfall, you have this, which might be a dependency of this, might be a dependency of that, and then you've got like first, start to finish, finish to finish, start to finish, start to start, and finish to start. And these are the different types of predecessors or connections, how you want to link up these tasks that you're kind of managing, right? More going to be talked about that in future videos, right? But in a way, it can you can manage well with Waterfall in this fashion, but naturally, there's much more flexibility if you're going by Agile, right? It's just the nature of it is made for changes, right? Okay, so that in a nutshell is pretty much the kind of the high level. Also, what I want to talk about is from a perspective of cost, time, team input, and scope, so that you guys understand how they differ and because those are kind of the key items in both of these guys. So scope, input, and what I mean by input, I mean by like customer input, team aspect, and then cost, right? So when we talk about scope for Waterfall, the scope works well when it's defined, right? As soon as you start going outside of that defined area, it gets very muddy. I want to call it muddy because it really gets muddy. In terms of Agile, scope is pretty straightforward. So it can be defined, but doesn't need to be defined. So maybe doesn't need a lot of definition. Oops. But then change is easy, right? Like we talked about it. From input perspective, customers' perspective, or support, only major stages, or as opposed to Agile, demos, right? And they can be, every 2 weeks, right? So there's constant collaboration, right? Teams doesn't need no constant collaboration. As opposed to Agile, you need constant collab, right? Just because you're constantly working with different teams, and this is the cycle, right? And you've got your guys here, and you're constantly working, and it's an ever-going cycle, right? Okay. In terms of costs, Waterfall can get expensive, just because if you want to add more stuff or anything or any changes, you got to go through this change control process, blah, 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 and so forth. It can get very, very, very pricey, right? Versus if you went with Agile, it can be less and controlled, right? And changes, if they arise, you can deal with them kind of on the fly, right? So those are pretty much the differences, again, high level. And then the last thing I want to point to you guys is some of the facts in project management, right? And that's that, and especially Agile, right? That 52% of project costs, 190% of their original estimate. It's pretty significant, right? And then the other one is 94 out of 100 projects, they get restarted. Can you imagine, like if you're restarting these projects, right? 94% of these 94% of projects actually get restarted because of the back and forths and changes. And so executives basically prefer that projects and milestones are kept to a smaller number, but only shockingly 22% are kept at that level. Even to this day, maybe this number, I got it from, this number has been pulled from KPMG, I believe, or the Deloitte study, but still shocking that 22% are only practicing small milestones and major major points of completion, right? So only 22%, right? Which is nothing, right? Okay, so now that we've kind of have gone through this, we get back to the whole point of this video, which is my story, right? And so my story has started with Waterfall, and I worked in an ERP company that made in 6 years 240 million. I was, I think, employee number 200 or something. That's when I was a quality assurance analyst, started my career, and I've learned a lot in terms of how to manage projects from various professionals that were working in that particular company. That was kind of my starting point. I mean, most of the IT professionals, when they enter this industry, they usually start with they usually start at what's this? See, this is what happens. Okay. They usually start with the entry job, which is typically QA, right? Maybe some get lucky to be developers or so forth, but most likely it's QA. And so that was my first role. And then a couple roles down the road, I started working for this medical company, which I eventually became a kind of project manager slash coordinator. And I pretty much learned project management on my own because I was forced to, as there weren't enough people in the company, and we needed to get the things out of the door, like services and products, right? So I had to learn fairly quickly how to really manage a team, and eventually I had a team of 12 people. So I was kind of a manager slash project manager, and so I learned a lot from that point on. And then from that point on, 2 years from there, I then moved into agency space. And this is mostly creative, right? Creative agencies. And here is where I learned this whole concept of Agile, right? Initially, it was just kind of like a very hybrid model, but eventually that led into learning about Scrum, right? That's where I started practicing Scrum as a Scrum Master kind of slash project manager, right? And so I worked in that space for about 7-8 years. Took some time to learn and adopt some of the Agile skills. And then eventually I transitioned into client-facing, and I was purely an IT project manager, right? And I was there for quite a long time. And here is where I started blending both Agile, Waterfall, and it kind of became a hybrid. And one thing that I'm going to tell you that is the most important thing you'll probably ever learn in my videos, and probably will be more effective than 99% of the other videos out there, is that when it comes to getting a top salary or becoming a very well-paid project manager, there's only really two things that contribute to that. The first one is the ability to manage people and understand personalities. And the second thing is tools and processes. These are the only two things that will eventually result in getting paid more, right? And when I talk about people, see, in order to learn and adapt, and especially now because things are moving fairly quickly, and clients and companies are demanding ever more, that you jump on to this Agile bandwagon as soon as possible. Whether that's, you're becoming a PM, whether you're a Scrum Master, doesn't matter. But what ends up happening is that as a result of moving into Agile, you are then being exposed to different processes and different teams, which is again back to here, and different tools as a result of being able to manage all these people. And as you're moving from one place to the other, you're basically absorbing different processes, different methodologies, different vibes, different people, different surroundings, environments, in every single possible aspect, right? And as a result of learning all these things, you are basically formalizing I would call it kind of like a dictionary of knowledge, right? That then you, after an X amount of time, you learn and you become very good at, is then you eventually become a consultant, right? And then to further expand on that, to be kind of at the very top of this practice is to be at the digital transformation level. And what does that mean? So that means, obviously, the word transformation is kind of the key. Well, the transformation is like you're transforming something. So from a company's perspective, you are basically looking to work with the C-levels. This thing again. Okay, so you're working with C-levels. You're also going to be working with as a result, with the VPs, SVPs. You're going to be working with all teams. And because of all that, you're going to be making a lot more money. Because what ends up happening is most businesses or organizations in the last couple of years are transitioning to a customer-centric approach, right? What that means is all the products and services, majority of the companies are now shifting into what the customer is looking for versus what the companies were thinking about the customers would like. So very different approach. And as a result, this whole IT digital aspect is now being brought into every single company. And in order to be able to manage these projects, you have to holistically understand all the things below it, right? And so this is kind of where I am, right? So I help companies transition into becoming very effective and also optimized by setting up, changing their processes, working with their people, their staff, especially with Scrum Masters and Agile coaches. And so that contributes to getting, paid well, right? And if I didn't actually jump into Agile years ago, it would have been probably detrimental for my career. And so obviously the Waterfall projects are kind of being obsolete at this point. I mean, there's still some out there, obviously, for construction, for manufacturing, for maybe some other projects, but a majority of the projects these days are within Agile, right? So the key really to Agile is the first thing you want to do, you want to challenge yourself, right? And so that means anywhere from 1 to 2 years max at a company, right? No more than that. Second thing you want to do is you want to change industries or industry. Why? Because the moment you change the industry is the moment that you change how things are operating, especially processes, people, pretty much everything, right? So it is very challenging, and it will be very challenging, especially if you don't have like a coach or a mentor such as myself that can kind of guide you and give you principles and baseline to be pretty much successful at any industry, because I've been pretty much in any industry, and I've been doing this for quite a while, and I can actually give you all the steps to getting to that path and being successful in the long run, right? Making anywhere from I don't know, $75 an hour to $200 an hour, which is a lot of money. I mean, for a majority of the people that they'll never see that money in their lifetime, right? But we're talking about every 3 to 6 to 9 months, or maybe a year, 2 years, you're switching contracts, and you're going from one company to another company, and you're just learning more and more and more, and you're absorbing more and more and more. And obviously you're going to be improving, and you're also going to be learning, and also you're going to be, as a result that you're switching and shifting from one place to the other, you're also going to be making more money. You'll be more knowledgeable, right? And obviously this is what the employers in the end are looking for, or companies, right? They want somebody who's got a lot of exposure and has various has experience with various situations and people and teams and so forth. So these two things definitely the key. The other thing that's also key is, at the end of the day, resume and interview skills. This also kind of separates you from everybody else, and less certs, more knowledge. And I don't want to get into this too much, but focus on learning and absorbing as much technical and business skills, hands-on skills, to understanding how to manage various stages of a project life cycle, right? Whether that's an Agile, Waterfall, or hybrid. And I also encourage people not to focus too much on these certifications, because at the end of the day, it's really all about knowledge, right? So I would say that these 4 would probably be the key to your success, and eventually getting to that high 6-figure yearly income. And we're talking about monthly income anywhere from $15K, $20K, and plus, right? If you want to find out more about how to get to this level, and if you want to learn everything that I've learned, and I can definitely transfer that on to you, you can click on the link below this video. There's a free strategy session that you can jump onto, and we can connect and see where you are currently in your life and your career, and that we can help you put a blueprint and strategy together to get you to where you want to be. And where you want to be is obviously top earner in project management, as a project manager or a Scrum Master or a program manager, and someone that will then keep on improving and learning, and having a fairly good foundation in order to keep on getting to that next project and that next pay grade, right? So that's the strategy call. Also, there's if you're not still ready, or you're on the fence of whether you want to come to these strategy free session calls, you're more than welcome to actually check out the Facebook group currently that we've started, and I basically provide daily tools, tips, and tricks in project management. There's also my team that actually reads the messages, and we also read comments, and we get in touch with people, and we help them, and eventually we get to a stage where you yourself you're being constantly helped with your current situation and your project management skills. And naturally, a lot of the individuals that are in our group become actually our students. And we look forward to working with you and look forward to becoming our member. And we look forward to being our subscriber to these videos. So have a great day and looking forward to seeing you in the next video.